Today's meeting of the Neighborhood and Affordable Housing Advisory Board is called to order on March 8th, 2022. Welcome everyone and happy International Women's Day to all the women with us today. The agenda for today's meeting is on the wall at the entrance of chambers. Please remember to turn off your cell phones. To ensure a complete record of the board's actions, we ask that each individual wishing to speak clearly state your name and spell your last name for the clerk. And we have a new board member with us today. Robin Field is filling the seat vacated by Linda Kemp, whose term expired in December. Robin has more than 15 years of experience as a mortgage loan originator, and she's worked with every affordable housing program throughout the Tampa Bay area. She currently works for Synovus Bank, and she also serves as the board chair for the Pinellas County Housing Finance Authority. Robin, welcome. I know you have a wealth of experience, and we look forward to working with you. Would you like to say a few words?
Well, thank you very much for allowing me to serve on the board, and affordable housing is a passion of mine. So I am going to make one correction. We had an election of officers at the HFA last month, and I'm now the vice chair.
Oh, there you go. Everything else was correct though?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, great. Well, now we'll ask the remaining board members to introduce themselves and identify the fields you each represent, and we'll start with Ms. Santiago.
Carmen Santiago for the people.
Kevin Chenault with representing the nonprofit industry.
Pete Scalia, low-income people.
Gabriela Camacho, representing Affordable Housing Builder.
Lindsay Dicus Harrison, real estate.
And I'm your board chair, Camille Hepting, and I represent the employers within the city of Clearwater. All right. So our first order of business is to approve the minutes of our board's December 14th meeting. May I have a motion to approve item 2.1?
So move.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes are approved. Item 3 is citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda. Is there anyone here to speak to items not on today's agenda? If so, please step to the podium and state your name and spell your last name for the record. You will have 3 minutes to speak on a subject that is not on today's agenda. All right, seeing no one come forward, we'll move on to the next item. So in new business items, we're gonna shuffle the order a little bit, just giving you all a heads up, but we will start with 4.1. Recommend City Council approval of the Economic Development and Housing Department Lot Disposition Program. Mr. Lane?
Thank you. Chuck Lane, Assistant Director, Economic Development and Housing Department. Another meeting with full attendance. Thank you all for your commitment to this board, and Robin, welcome. I know we've worked together on a couple of different things over the years. You won't be afraid to speak your mind, and I know you add a lot of value to the board. So this item, I want to amend the recommendation first and foremost. This does not require City Council approval, so the staff recommendation is for you to recommend approval of this procedure. Okay, so as you all know, we are recipients of State Housing Initiative Partnership Program funding, and because of that, we are required to keep an inventory of city-owned property that may be available for affordable housing. City Council approves that every 3 years. It's a requirement by statute, right? So the reason the state requires us to do that is because it puts developers on. We're required to post that publicly, put it on our website. It's always on our website, that list. And what it does is it puts on notice these properties that may be available, and developers call us and they ask if they can buy the property or have it donated to them. And it's been pretty effective. The list we've pretty much run through all of the properties. We have 2 properties, I think, for single-family homes that remain on that list. One of them we're working through a quiet title action, and the other will probably be the first property that we dispose of through this policy. Okay. So how did we do it before? Developers would see that list, they'd call me up. If the timing was right and they were qualified to build that home, we'd move forward with it. And so it's kind of a first come, first serve kind of thing. And that's not the best way to do this. So what this does is this creates a transparent and competitive process for us to decide who those properties go to for development of affordable housing. Okay? Something that as government we really need to have in place. So this is modeled largely after a program that St. Pete has in place. Okay? It's kind of started with that. There's some significant differences between their program and this one. But I think what we have is something that's defendable, and I think it works. So really what it is, first and foremost, we'll put a call out to developers and find out who's interested in being on a list of developers, a list of interested developers, a LID. We always have to have an acronym, right? We're government. So what we'll do is we'll vet those groups. We'll make sure they're solvent, financially solvent, legally entitled to own a business in Florida. Just kind of the routine things. They need to know that they have the ability, the business acumen to build out these homes. Really basic stuff, the ability to sell homes to income qualifying home buyers. So these are things that we'll make sure and we'll vet them, and then through that process, and I think very quickly we can come up with a list of interested developers, okay? So then what happens is when we have a property that is available for donation or sale, we'll convene a property disposition committee. It would be kind of a subset, not necessarily the whole board. That will be 3 people will be on that committee, and it will be myself, a member of the Planning and Development Department, hopefully Gina Clayton, the department director, and the chair of the NAHAB. And what we'll do is we'll go through each application, and in the property disposition committee will score each application. So we'll have rankings, number 1, number 2, and that's really how it's pretty much as simple as that. So what is the criteria that we're going to be ranking people on? So we're going to ask questions that are going to help us answer these questions as we meet as the property disposition committee. So, are you a registered nonprofit organization? That gets 2 points. If you're not a nonprofit, it gets less points. Nonprofits are always more community focused, and we prefer to work with those folks. Have you received a lot through the city's lot disposition program within the last 12 months? We want to encourage, we want this to help not just one organization, So if you have acquired a property through this program in the last 12 months, you don't get a point. We're trying to get this to more developers, not just focus on the one best developer. We want to kind of spread the wealth, if you will. We want to focus a little bit on speed. How quickly do you anticipate commencing vertical construction? The quicker, the better. Our funding sources have timelines, and if we don't meet those timelines, we're penalized. So we want to encourage a faster process. From the date of acquisition, how many months do you anticipate selling the property? Again, speed. We can't go past 18 months, particularly with the home program. Do you have experience assisting home buyers in obtaining financing for homes limited by income eligibility? Obviously, a very important part of the program. Do you have experience providing future existing homeowners with home buyer education? Another important component. Does your organization work specifically within or own any other property within 2 miles of the subject lot? Familiarity with Clearwater and our neighborhood, our permitting processes, that all weighs into that. Has your organization constructed any other homes within 2 miles of the subject lot within the last year? Again, familiarity is important to us. Does your organization own other property within the incorporated limits of City of Clearwater it will commit to developing concurrently with the development of the site offered for disposition? Obviously, if we can leverage our lot to build another lot as well, that's an important thing. We'll take advantage of that opportunity, so that gets additional points. Does your organization own or control property adjacent to the site offered for disposition that you are willing to combine with the site to provide for a more desirable development opportunity? So I think this is a very important criteria, because if we have a lot that, some of the lots in North Greenwood are platted at 35 feet wide, right? You can't you can build a home on it, but you're very limited. So if we have a developer that owns the lot next door and is willing to include that lot to make it a more desirable development opportunity and more development options, I think that's really important, to the point where I think that the property disposition committee should decide how many points to give in that case, because that may be, in some cases, if it's a really challenging lot, that may be the determining factor, So that's important that we do that. And then we get into some environmental features. We include rooftop solar panels or other features to substantially reduce energy costs for the homeowner. If they're going to do solar, that's most amount of points under this category. Other features that we'll have to evaluate on a case-by-case, it also helps. I think we'll want something to exceed the HUD minimum, like Energy Star appliances. I mean, that's all good and all, but we'd like to see something stronger than that. And also, the next question, we install electrical vehicle charger, or at least rough wiring. That's important as well. I mean, if they're willing to do that. We're not going to make them put necessarily the component in, but if it's rough wired, when that homeowner does eventually get an EV car, electric vehicle, it's a quick fix to install that feed. So I think those are good features as well. And there are also some things here that a developer is going to represent that they're going to do. If they don't accomplish those things, then they've gotten a higher score than they should have. So if that's the case, we're going to exclude them from the program. If that happens, we're going to exclude them from the program for 12 months. Okay? There are things that can happen that are out of the developer's control, like speed. We had a pandemic. We all know what happened with construction prices and the ability to get goods and to get construction materials. That kind of thing is an understandable delay that we would factor in. So if there, mitigating circumstances can be considered, in cases like that. So once the Property Disposition Committee lands on a recommendation, the highest scoring developer will come to the NAHAB, and we'll explain that. I'll present that to you. This board can agree with that recommendation. You can come up with a different recommendation. That's entirely up to you. We'll have that discussion here as a board, and then I will go to council with a recommendation for council. Ultimately, anytime we dispose of property, sell, transfer, donate, anything like that, it requires council approval. So it's ultimately their decision. We're just, through this process, we're going to arm them with good information so they can make a good decision. So that's really what this process is about. So I think it's dramatic improvement on what we've done. We can make, as we go through, we can make changes to it over time as we find pitfalls that we didn't expect. But I think it's a real good start to a better process. So I'll take questions.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
Thank you, Chuck, for the presentation and for your efforts in putting all this together. On number 3, when you say from date of acquisition, within how many months do you anticipate commencing vertical construction? So you have 3 and 6 months. So you're giving more value to the 3 month, but
Correct.
honestly, based on my experience with Habitat, rarely anyone will be able to get any vertical construction within 3 months of acquisition. I mean, because once you obtain the property, then you start all the permitting process, and you cannot touch the property for water meters or things like that prior to that. So the 3 month is really, it's really not going to work for, I mean, it may work for Habitat once in a while, but it definitely won't work for other organizations in the field. I mean, I don't feel that that's accurate, It's not really giving more people. So anyone can say, yes, 3 months, but the reality is very rarely anybody will have any vertical construction at 3 months after acquisition.
See, that's a really good feedback, because that's one of the criteria that if they don't meet that deadline, now they're out of the program for 12 months. So we have to be very careful about what we're
Yeah.
asking here.
Right.
So would you recommend that we kick that to, say, 6 and 9 months?
6 and 9 months, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Another thing is also, selling the completed home to a qualifying buyer, and also those criterias are very strict, because, I mean, again, honestly, Habitat is very successful in building the home within that 9 month period, but if you really want to open it to other affordable housing providers, I don't think the timing it's flexible anyways. So I understand about the 18 months, because you said the money has to be distributed by the 18-month timeline, right?
Yep.
But maybe giving them another criteria of points for the 9, 12, and 15 month would be appropriate. I mean, I don't know. I mean, because you have 1, 2, and 3, so there's not much more to go by it. But
Do you think we should remove the 9 months and then just give 3, 2, and 1 to 12, 15, and 18
12,
to be
15,
more
and 18.
realistic?
I think so, yeah.
It's just,
Okay.
I'm hearing what you're saying is you don't want you don't want to incentivize anybody that's trying to get into this program to say, I'll circle 9 months because I really want this.
Yeah.
And then in the back end, it ends up hurting them because they're not able to, and then they're stuck for 12 months.
Yeah.
Would that be possible, Chuck, to remove the 9 months criteria on here and just do the 12, 15, and 18?
Yeah, it would, whether it's 321 or 210.
Right.
Yeah, but I think that's a really good recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, on number 8, you had, your question is, has your organization constructed any other homes within 2 miles of the subject lot line in the last 2 years? But at the same time, on number 2, I don't want to use the word penalizing, but you're not giving points if you have received any property from the lot disposition program. So,
Well, number 8, thinking that was intended to be a bill that wasn't part of this program.
okay,
Maybe I can clarify that.
okay,
But, obviously, 2 is intended to try to, Habitat for Humanity is a really strong organization, and they're going to score very well on each of these programs. And, without something like this, it could mean Habitat scores the highest on most, if not all. And Habitat's great, but, I think it's important that we work with other community development programs as well. There are other nonprofits in our city that want access to this program. So it's really just intended to kind of get others involved.
yeah, okay. Yeah, so then definitely, I strongly believe that number 3, number 4 should be adjusted a little.
Yes, I will do that as you all recommended.
Thank
I
you.
think that's a great point. Thank you.
And to follow up with what Gabby mentioned, maybe, because right now, if you have received a lot through the lot disposition program, but then you also developed something within 2 miles, those 2 points kind of negate themselves, right? So you get 0 at the first question, but then you get 1 at the other one.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a way, in order to make this new process a little bit more inclusive, maybe question 2 should have a higher wage than the other question, the question 8 that we were just looking at. Maybe if we want to be more inclusive, question 2 would be yes, you get 0 points, and no, you get 2 or 3, because then it would make a difference that's large enough that it would include new organizations, whether or not they've, and especially if they've completed other projects that were not through the lot disposition program within
Okay.
that 2 mile radius.
Okay. Yeah, I would go to 2. Yeah, I don't want to exclude folks either. But
Right.
yeah,
Right.
that's a good
No,
recommendation.
it doesn't, we don't have clarification on the penalties if
Right.
somebody doesn't, if the build is not completed within, so how are you gonna, is it something that we will be able to see and understand?
Well, that's my job to monitor that,
Okay.
to make sure that these time frames are met.
Okay.
And me and my staff, we will do that.
Okay.
We'll make sure that whatever they've represented in this application is, that they follow through with it. And I'll caution, each developer that signs up for this program, make sure you're not you're not being
Overpromising,
over, optimistic,
Yeah.
overly optimistic with some of these questions, because there is a penalty.
Yeah, and especially in today's market, the timelines are getting more and more difficult, especially for those that are not experienced building, so.
Yeah. Yeah, with number 4, I'll double check the reg, that may be from completion of home, with that 18 months, I'll double check that. And I'll make the modifications, definitely noted your concern, and I agree with you, I'll work with that.
Okay.
I'll work with that criteria, of course.
With number 4, I guess it really goes to more the construction timeline, because the sale, once you have the CO, would take about 45 to 60 days, depending if they're using a down payment program.
Right.
So you have to add that into it. So I guess it really just comes down to the construction timeline. But I like having timelines because you also don't want to give a lot to somebody that's going to put it, down the line with other projects they have and have that lot sitting there. When we have such a need for affordable housing.
Yeah, and when we can fund these builds too, with home funding, SHIP funding. And, when that home gets sold, that money, most of that money comes back to us because it's paid off, the loan's paid off. Now we can use that money to support another build. So the quicker we churn that money, the better off we are.
Absolutely.
So,
Any other
Very good, thank
questions from the board? I have a question for you, Chuck. So thank you for explaining how the process was before and how we're trying to change it now. My one question is that going to make the overall process longer for affordable housing to actually happen, for those houses to be on the market, for these people to be able to live in those houses?
I think we can do this pretty quickly.
Okay.
We can do those property disposition committee meetings virtually.
Okay.
So it's really just scheduling a call, and we can go through all the applications in, 30 minutes to an hour.
Okay.
So I don't think it's going to delay anything. I really don't. If it does even slightly, I think it's worthwhile to have a transparent and competitive process in
Absolutely,
place.
absolutely. I think it's just important that because you're going to be asking people to fill out this application of sorts, you're going to want to give them a little bit of time to do that.
Yep.
And then you add a little bit of time to get everybody on the same, schedule to make that meeting. And then you may have to review what the recommendation was. So I was just wondering if that was a consideration as well, that, we just need to make sure that maybe this time that we're adding on is something that we can then take off when it comes to maybe permitting, because I know that's a big thing that we had talked about. So just to keep that in mind.
Yeah, no, very good point. Have to be conscious of keeping the process moving.
Yeah.
I think the program that I wrote up, it allows 30 days for an applicant to submit. Maybe we can reduce that,
Okay.
because it doesn't take that much time. A developer can turn that around pretty quickly. And I communicate with these folks regularly, so there won't be missed opportunities. So,
And so in the first step, which is call out to be on the list of interested developers, once you have that list is going to be a group that receives, let's say, an email or notification every time a property becomes
Yes,
available on that
yes.
list? Okay.
And that list, we can add folks to that list at any time.
Okay.
Or remove.
Okay.
So, yeah, once the list is in place, we get a little bit more nimble.
And that will make it, I think, a lot more fair in the sense that everybody will get the information at the same time. And it
Yes.
won't be about how plugged in are you, how connected are you, do
Exactly.
you have Chuck on speed dial, yes or no? It will be more, okay, everybody got the information at the same
Exactly,
time.
exactly.
Sorry.
Go ahead, yeah.
Chuck, I just, if they fail to comply with this, they can't be in the program for 12 months. And the committee can decide if there's mitigating circumstances. I understand. What happens if something unforeseen happens? Say the developer goes bankrupt completely. He can't complete the project. Does the property revert back to the city then? Or do they?
So that's a major difference between our program and St. Pete's program. St. Pete leases the property to the developer. And I think probably, I'm sure, to protect against that from happening, they still own the property. So what we do is we're going to deed the property to the developer with a special warranty deed, okay? And it's going to have a clause in it that's a reverter clause that gives us the ability to take that property back if something like that happens. So yes, we're protected that way. That's how we've always disposed of these properties when we donate them or sell them for less than appraised value. We give ourselves the opportunity to take it back if they don't accomplish their end of it. So, great question, thank you.
And that would only be the case if the construction couldn't be completed. I mean, if they end up taking more than 18 months or more than whatever they had selected
Yeah.
on there, they would still keep it. They would just not be in the program for another.
Yeah, well, even if they build a home and something happens and it's just stalled, we will still have the right to take that property back. Now, would we, I would certainly believe that we would make that developer whole for the cost that they put in. That shouldn't be a difficult thing to do. But, this is a risk they're taking. If they want to get involved in this program, they're signing up for that clause. And that's what they need to do.
Chuck, I wanted just to thank you for making the application process streamlined and efficient for the builder. Because the one thing we don't want to do is delay it by making a builder do a 12-page application. So
Right.
this is very streamlined, and I think it'll work well.
Terrific, thank you. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, great. Does anyone from the public wish to comment on this item? All right, we will go straight to our motion. May I have a motion to approve item 4.1?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, so this is where we're going to switch the script a little bit. We're going to go to 4.3, election officers first, before we discuss 4.2, if that's okay with everyone. So it's that time of the year again when we need to elect a chair and a vice chair of this board for the next year. Ms. Sullivan, can you lead us in the right direction on this item?
Do I have nominations for chair, please?
I nominate Camille Hibbing for chair.
I second.
I second. Can we second several times?
Are there other nominations? Then could I have a motion to appoint Ms. Hefty?
I'll make the motion to appoint her.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that was easy.
And now you could do the vice chair.
Okay, is there a motion to nominate a vice chair? I have a motion to nominate Kevin Chanel as vice chair.
I'll second that.
That's it, we can just go all in favor? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we have a vice chair. Item 4.2 is discuss city council presentation by the NAHAB chairperson, which is why we needed to do 4.3 first. So this is something that we have talked about in the past, especially last year. Robin, to bring you up to speed. I think what we want to do is give our city council really an update on what this board has been doing. But Chuck, do you have any more guidance on this item before we talk about it and we welcome feedback?
Well, this is something that most of our advisory boards do. Once a year, the chair of that board will do a presentation to council, update council on, the activities of that board and what they're doing. It's just a good way to stay connected. And we haven't done that since I've been in the seat with this board. And I think it's something we should do annually, particularly now with this, with the things that this board is tasked with, with affordable housing, community development programs, homelessness. I think it's good. I think it's important that you engage the board. So guidance, not necessarily. I think, Ms. Hepting, I think you want to get some feedback from the board. Ms. Sanderson and I will give you any support you need in creating a presentation to council. It's yours. We're not going to tell you what to do and what not to do. But we're here for you, to support you in any way we can. But before doing so, obviously, it's critical that you get the board's feedback. So that's what this is about.
Absolutely. So does the board have any feedback on what you all think this presentation should include or should, be focused on?
Do you have a day?
Not yet.
I don't believe so.
I was,
So, how about like affordable programs for single individuals?
And by that you mean present the programs that we're currently, okay. Okay.
I think it would be good just to start with a recap of what has been done this year and maybe some challenges that staff as well as the board feels that the city is facing in the current climate that we're in right now with affordable housing in our community. I think that might be a good focus and a good getting them on board with the direction that this committee needs to go.
Absolutely.
Chuck just touched on what this board is really grown into handling over the years. And it's a lot more than it was years ago, at least when I started here. I'm wondering if it isn't time to put together some kind of going along with what you just said, maybe some kind of an overall plan for what it is that we're trying to accomplish or what the city's plan is actually overall. I don't know that there's anywhere there's a blueprint for what are we doing for the homeless and affordable housing in the city proper. And maybe we can come up with some kind of an outline or a game plan that says, this is what we all know what we're trying to accomplish. But these are the things we've already done, and this committee, to my knowledge, has accomplished quite a bit. And these are the things we'd like to do going forward, and how that works with the city council and kind of put it all together. And I think it's time to get focused on a program an overall program that we're all on the same page with. There's a lot of, I've said this before, there must be this many in a book, organizations that are out there trying to help the homeless and the poor. And I've yet to find anywhere that it really comes together, anywhere. It's like an octopus going in so many different directions. Everybody trying to do the right thing, but it seems like sometimes we're working against each other.
That is a challenge in the nonprofit world. Am I mic'd over here? It is a challenge in the nonprofit world. You have, you seem to have these silos, and everybody's working in these silos, and they all have good intentions. But, if there's a way to create synergy,
And that's what I'm saying. Maybe this committee can be the point of the spear on that, to try to bring all of these different organizations together that says, look, what you're doing is good, but maybe if you can focus on this over here for Habitat, this would help more people, or more people can benefit, or maybe we can put some of the people that are building the houses. I don't know. It always comes down to, and I always keep saying this, if you can get people in a room and talking together, you can find solutions to problems. And however we can do that, however this committee can do that and lead, I think that's what we should possibly look at.
Well, and I agree with you there, with the understanding that our primary focus is affordable housing.
Yes.
And perhaps we would want to do some type of workshop for the committee where we bring the affordable housing folks together and we talk about it, dovetailing off what you said, because we've got a lot of folks, but the direction of affordable housing has changed over the years. And we just need to make sure that we're all educated on, I think we're all pretty well educated, but what direction do we want to take with affordable housing? What direction is the housing development corporations looking to move in the future? So it might not hurt to do something like that.
I agree. Thank you. You explained that, we have many organizations trying to do the good thing, and it's like an octopus, right? Everybody working in their own silo, which I agree, it's a silo, because ideally, you would have the folks working with homeless, getting them ready to then being able to afford a house, So it's a holistic approach with any program, because, it's not only serving the homeless at that moment, but just in the long term. Like, how can you grab that one individual and make him, be successful with job opportunities, with training, to get to the point that they can actually move into a permanent housing. So it's very, how would I say it?
Challenging.
Challenging to say the least, But I think you're right. I mean, maybe we can be that force behind that program, At least bring everybody in the same room to discuss those ideas.
I think a lot of times, from what I've seen, if we can get that, if you can get the people together, because everybody's concerned, everybody is trying to do the right thing. And it just takes a matter of saying, you know what, this will help this person over here, and guess what, that person over there, the problem that you're facing, here's the solution right here. Sometimes it's as simple as that.
If we move that direction towards something like that, perhaps we could put some teeth into it to encourage folks to participate. And the teeth I'm thinking about is an additional point system, and maybe something like what we just talked about. Did you participate in the workshop? Yes, you get extra points on scoring. No, you don't get points. So that would encourage folks to participate, because if we don't have some type of encouragement, there's no incentive for them to come to something like that.
Yeah. No, I mean, another thing is like, how many properties do you say you have in the lot disposition program? 2?
Right now, there's 2. We're
So-
beginning a round of code foreclosures. It should produce additional lots. That's why this is.
But we could even do that on the grant cycles for
Yep.
some of the other applications and grants that we do.
Yeah,
Give
because I
some
mean,
points.
having 2 properties is not really,
Yeah.
that is not so much of an incentive,
Yeah.
but, having other,
And put it on the grants would,
yeah, exactly.
a lot of people come before us for grants, so that would be.
Yeah, for any sort of grants, not just affordable housing, but just to serve, the population, so.
So in the meantime, before this next step happens, I think I agree with you all that the presentation to the city council should be a recap of what this board did last year in 2021, some of the challenges due to the current climate and other challenges that we may be facing. Talking about the evolution of the board and its responsibilities and a plan for what we're trying to accomplish with, like you said, an outline of what are our goals and in accordance to those goals, what is our role as this board and then what is the role of the city council in turn. I think that's a good start. I think it's a good way for me to at least put something together and,
Understanding the sunshine laws, and we can't talk about this outside of here, my recommendation would be for you to bring back a rough draft next month so that then we can have some input and discussion in regards
Okay.
to it at our next month's meeting.
I can do that.
And next month, we'll see how that, next month is reserved for presentations for subrecipients, which usually takes an hour and a half or so.
Yeah.
Maybe we should kick it back to the following month.
Okay.
If that's
Okay.
okay with the board. Okay.
And that's still good for our timeline of presentation to city council?
Yeah, when we're ready, we'll
Okay.
agenda it.
Okay.
Just one more point on the workshop that you're talking about. We give away money, so we do have a hook to get people to show up. It's a great point that Kevin made. A workshop like that, I think we should include lenders. That would be.
I'm sorry to Chuck.
Include lenders.
Yes.
That's a big part of what we do. And I don't think we have a strong enough network of lenders, so I think that's an area we can improve in with our DPA program. So just a side thought.
I think getting the professionals in the room that are helping people with these programs, and then also seeing how the programs that the city of Clearwater has, how they're really working in the climate that we're currently in. I know in another committee I'm in, we're facing huge challenges with the down payment programs. It's great if all city governments have increased the amount of the down payment program, but even with that huge increase, we still don't have, first-time home buyers can't compete in this market, even with that increase. So there's other changes that need to come with those down payment programs, and I think getting the opinion of lenders, realtors, what we're actually seeing out there, that we have these great programs, but people can't use them. They cannot compete using a down payment program. City of Clearwater, City of St. Petersburg, City of Largo, Pinellas County, especially any of those programs, it's almost impossible for these buyers to close with a down payment program. So there's some challenges and some things that probably need to be discussed, but I think having an open forum workshop where you are bringing the professionals in that are actually working in those environments would help.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think if all of the local government jurisdictions in the county had the same terms and down payment assistance program, would that be helpful?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's one of the solutions.
Because they're all different.
Yeah, they are all different. They are all different. They all have different requirements. It's also really confusing, especially when you get in some of these areas. You can have one home in the city limits of Clearwater and one is in Pinellas County, the neighbor's property. So I think, everybody being on the same page, but then there's other tweaks that have to come that one is the HQS inspections that these homes have. The timeline of where that falls is harming buyers actually in the process, because that's coming towards the end, and as a realtor, we have no way of protecting them once we get to the end and the HQS flags everything. And initially, these programs didn't have the HQS inspection. I know why they were added on, but at this climate, it's almost impossible with those inspections to have a buyer close on a home. And they're losing out money in the end because we're putting these inspections at the very end of the program. Yeah.
Really good point.
So is that something, a workshop of the, of the size and the content that we're talking about, is that something that we can put on the calendar in the next few months? Is that something that we have to get approval for? Is that something that,
Well, I mean, do you all want to have that in this forum? Where you're at the dais and we bring in, some of these groups. Now, no?
I don't think so. I think it should be in more of an informal setting.
yeah, I agree.
And
Well,
we
you
probably
won't-
should
you
need
won't
an
be able to
agenda.
pitch-
on what
Yeah,
the
you sit around, I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine a round of 10 tables, rounds of 10s, and you have a dozen in a room. You can move from table to table, bringing your expertise to each topic that's going on, and people can move and meet people and help find solutions, rather than it being a formal setting like this.
So, Ms. Sullivan, we could notice a meeting like that as a public meeting and the board could participate? Okay,
So as Dad,
okay.
And maybe this is a silly question, doing something like that, that's not a violation of the sunshine law, right? I mean, that's something that's going to be out in the public, everybody's, I mean, we can do that, right?
That was the point of my question for Ms. Sullivan. If we have to notice as a public meeting, and then you're able to participate. If we don't advertise it, then you can't. Then it would be a violation. We can do it within the sunshine rules, is what I'm saying. I would think that maybe there's there's very vast differences in objectives we need to talk about with affordable housing versus community development. Maybe
Right.
it's two workshops.
Right.
I'll get with Ms. Anderson and we'll talk through the logistics of that, but it sounds like something we might be able to do. I think we'd get some really good feedback.
And I think even if we take a little bit of time to kind of refine what we want the content or maybe the agenda to be, or the conversations, those split conversations to look like, if we can find a date and already put it out there, then we can get people, plenty of advance notice that they, should put it on their calendar and come. And then as we get closer, we can always give more information as to what exactly we're going to be discussing.
And maybe we can get suggestions from the
From them
public
as
too,
well,
yeah, for topics that they want to discuss or they want to learn or they want to,
Yeah.
connect with other organizations. So,
And maybe you could put fine print, very, very fine print on the bottom of the notice that this could help you if you approach the city for money in the future.
Well, we have ways to do that. So, really good feedback. We're right now, we're in the process of beginning our annual action plan. We're accepting applications right now. So that feedback probably isn't going to happen in time for us to really incorporate it into our annual plan, right? But it's not a rush. It's something that we can do, sometime throughout this calendar year.
Right.
And that feedback will be very important when we get into next January, next February, and we begin the process all over again. There was I don't know if it's off topic or not, there was a letter written from the Foundation for a Healthy St. Pete recently to Pinellas County with feedback on their process, on their annual action planning process. Somewhat critical in some ways. That's not the point. The point is, I chair a jurisdictions meeting every Thursday, once a month, on the first Thursday of every month. And we get all the local governments together and we talk about things that we're doing. So it's a way for us to try to kind of... Entitlement local governments. Yeah. So it's St. Pete, it's Largo is there, Pinellas County is there, Pinellas Park is there. So we all communicate. We talk about the things that we're doing so we can understand the universe, right? So completely lost my train of thought.
The letter,
Uh-huh.
there was a letter that came.
Yes, and we discussed that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we discussed that letter, and then we talked about, maybe we need to do a better job at coordinating amongst ourselves and how we go through the planning process. So I suggested maybe we focus one of these meetings on that in the fall. So maybe we'll make some progress. always trying to find ways to make things better.
Right.
But yeah, thank you for the
Well, and if this workshop, you know, the way that it ends up happening is helpful to both this committee and your department, it might be something that we want to do every year. It might be something that we want to do, you know, with timing a little bit different so it coincides better with wherever it can actually make changes.
Yep.
But I think getting it on the calendar and getting started is the most important thing.
Yep.
We just need to make sure that we're able to make it happen.
Terrific. Very good feedback.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, where am I at? Item 5 is old business. Does the board have any old or new business to discuss?
Chuck, I don't know if this is the right place to ask this, but I'm going to anyway. We just recently went through an application process for the American Rescue Plan. Do you have an update on that or anything that you can share with the board?
Yeah, director's report is next. I was going to talk about that.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
See, we're just a little early. All right, so we are moving on to item 6, which is director's report. You're going to get your answer.
So thank you, Mr. Schnall. As you all know, we got an allocation of home ARP funding, American Rescue Plan funding. It's associated with the home program, which is housing. It is nothing like the home program. It is geared towards helping people that are either homeless or facing the imminent threat of becoming homeless. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that you can fund, most of the stuff that you can fund with this money is public service programs, which you can't do with home money, right? So we have 1.6 million and change was our allocation. Roughly half of that we put towards the Blue Sky project in downtown Clearwater. The 81 units needed additional subsidy. So we put I think $875,000 towards that project to support the construction of 5 of those units. And those units will be reserved for people that meet this criteria. Okay. So the remaining funds, we opened up an application cycle, and we invited people to apply. We had a number of applications. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 or 9 applications. We found one of them to be ineligible, another one to be something that we wouldn't consider funding. Really, I think a capability issue. I think it was a matter of capacity with that organization. And then the others were just various public services that we considered, and we put together a technical review committee. Mr. Schnall was on that committee. Also, a member for the Homeless Leadership Alliance was on that committee. Our city clerk, who was always on our technical review committee, was on that, and Duggan Cooley. Duggan is the president, CEO, if you will, of the Pinellas Community Foundation. He very well respected in this field, as well respected, I think, as anybody in the county. So it was a really good committee, really good feedback. We graded and scored the applications. So what we're doing now, we're working with a consultant to put that plan together on how we distribute those funds. All right, so hopefully by beginning of summer, midsummer at the latest, we can have that plan in place. You know, there's a lot of steps we've got to go through with that planning process that HUD requires, so it takes some time. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Any questions on that program, home ARP funding?
So you mentioned that there were a few organizations that didn't get approved, or their application didn't get approved. Were those new organizations that the city hasn't worked with before, that hasn't funded before for public services, or were they existing?
The one that was ineligible, we're actually currently contracting with them on a public facility project.
Okay.
And that's the first time that we've worked with them. That was ineligible because they didn't propose to address the qualifying population.
Okay. Good.
And there was another group, I believe, do you remember, Kevin, the other group that...
I don't think we'd funded them. I don't remember the group exactly, but I remember the application.
Yeah, I don't think we did.
I don't remember ever seeing them come through, but it's not a brand-new committee.
Right.
It's just they were a little weak in financials.
Yeah.
And we were concerned about them being able to finish the project.
Yeah, I think it's coming back to me. I think that group lost a lot of funding through the pandemic. And what they wanted to do was to use this money to replace that funding and continue the level of services that they were providing. Home Opera is very clear that you have to increase services.
Right.
Increase capacity, increase services.
Okay.
So I think that's why we declined that one as well for funding. But I will, we'll have a public meeting of this board to go through those allocations
Okay.
when the time is right.
Excellent.
We're also in the process of going through our annual action plan, where right now we're accepting applications. That application period closes next Wednesday, okay? We had a subrecipient application workshop, so anybody that's applying attended that workshop, they got an extra point on their scoring by attending. That's kind of how we suck them in. I think that was a productive workshop. It really intended to help them understand how to fill out an application, how to fill out an effective application. So we're in that again, and the next meeting we have of this board, all of those folks that submit an application will present their program to you. Okay, each will have 3 minutes to present. If there's multiple applications from an organization, they'll have 5 minutes to present. That's typically how we do it. We'll see how many we get. How many we get typically depends on how long we allow them to speak. Mr. Chenault, you gonna?
Yeah, the public meeting or the workshop, I don't know if, I don't want to recommend or put something out there, but perhaps if you inform this committee or board, maybe one of us would want to attend just to show our support of that process.
Sure.
So I don't want to require us to attend, because I know we all have busy schedules, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't hurt to open it up.
Yeah, that's a good
There's
point.
Sunshine, there may be a sunshine issue.
Yeah, that's why I was hesitating on that.
If only one is there. If only one, right, but otherwise we have a sunshine issue.
Maybe we could start with the chair and maybe the vice chair if the chair is not able to do it. I think that would be nice, a message from the board, expressing support. And we have these kind of things, these kind of, workshops, 2 or 3 throughout the year. Really mostly it's technical assistance we're providing to help them understand what we're doing and what they need to do. So, yeah, I think that's would be a good step. Thank you, Kevin. Anybody else? Okay. So we hadn't met in 2 months. The last meeting was December. We always had a rule in place that advisory boards aren't to meet unless you have to take action on something. You didn't have to take action on anything today. I asked you to approve the disposition program. It wasn't required. So this could have been a meeting that we could have skipped as well. Okay, we didn't. The city manager informed me that the issues that you discuss at this board are very important to our community, and he doesn't want to see us go more than 2 meetings without convening. So we're going to make that a rule from now on. We won't go more than 2 meetings. That won't be a problem for the next several months. We got a lot of meetings coming up. I think the next meeting we can potentially skip is July. So we have stuff scheduled for you for the next several months. Okay. And I'm grateful for the city manager making that determination. I think it's important. To that end, I'd like to just kind of open it up at this point. And I don't always like to just kind of open up general discussion, but I do kind of want to talk a little bit about housing, and what we're doing. There are, there's a lot more. There's different segments that we could talk about, right? There's, as you all know, there's regulated housing, right? And that's what we deal with in my office. We issue funds. And because of that, we put restrictions on property. We monitor, we make sure people follow the rules. There's a whole stack of regulations that we need to follow. That's regulated housing, right? And then there's naturally occurring affordable housing, right? It's like a perfect example of NOAA, naturally occurring affordable housing. A perfect example is mobile home parks, right? They stay affordable because of the type of unit that they are, right? They're getting more expensive now too. They've always been considered NOAA, right? But maybe for a quick discussion today, maybe to get some feedback from the board, and this is again, we're in the middle of our AAP. Let's just talk for a moment about the regulated stuff, the stuff we do. And if the board, has any suggestions, as to, what we might be able to do differently or be more aggressive with or less aggressive with, I'm really, happy, I want your feedback, So right now, we have the programs that we've always run. We have down payment assistance program. We know we have challenges with that. We've just increased our maximum subsidy. We're actually considering increasing it further to match what Largo has done, okay? You all know the challenges in that program. It's hard to get that first mortgage. We have a homeowner rehabilitation program that we manage. We manage that in-house. Some folks qualify for a deferred loan. We got people in our city that live in their home, and that without even a mortgage, they can't even have trouble affording to stay in that home because they're on Social Security alone. Those people get deferred loans. They don't have to pay it back until they sell the home. And others who have higher level income, they have a payment loan with us, okay? You're all familiar with what we do with developers. We work with developers on single-family builds, multifamily builds, multifamily rehabs. This is a universe of the regulated affordable housing that we're in as a city, okay? So, I'm going to throw it out there and ask you if there's any changes, any adjustments you think we can make. We can get into the other stuff at other meetings with the NOAA, and we'll talk about these things. But I'm all ears if you think there's some shifting we can do.
Start with the down payment program because I work with it often. And like you said, City of Largo did just increase their limits, but actually Rob and I were working with a client. Even with that increase, this is a single person. She could get up to $55,000. Problem is, the purchase price limits are too low. She can't afford a home in the city limits of Largo because the purchase price limits are lower than what homes are selling for in that area. And really it puts them only into being able to afford condos, if there are condos, but then condos, when you're talking about that, the debt to income and things like that, it's going to change also their affordability. So that's one issue, what I see across the board with down payment assistance programs is their purchase price limits. Purchase price limits are too low for what homes are selling for in that area. So even if you have a home listed at $245,000, homes aren't selling at the list price. The list price has now become the start price. So they put a home on the market, the start price, it's going to go over that price no matter what with multiple offers. I haven't had a home in the last 2 years that has not had multiple offers. And sometimes you're getting in essence of 25 offers on one property. So we're trying to help these first-time home buyers and help them compete in a very, very competitive market. So that's one thing that I see is the purchase price limit. So it doesn't matter how much we increase that down payment, it has to reflect in the purchase price limits. The next is the HQS inspections, the Housing Quality Standard, Section 8, whatever you want to call it. So a buyer has in the first 7 days or so of their contract, they're usually as-is contracts with the right to inspect. So they have a home inspection period, and during that home inspection period, they have their own personal home inspection usually, as well as insurance inspections, 4-point, as well as a wind mitigation. And then and that's their time to cancel. They have the right to cancel during that if something comes up. Right now, we can't usually negotiate for sellers to do any repairs on properties. Then they're going through the down payment process as well as the processing with a lender at the same time. And then at the very end, the down payment assistance programs are throwing in their own inspection, which is the HQS or something like that. It's coming usually, we're finding, Robin, you can fill in here, the week of closing. So now the buyers paid for their own personal home inspection. They paid for their appraisal on the property. We're closing, we're at the end, and we throw in an HQS inspection at the very end of this process. There's no negotiating power that an agent can have at that point in the process to help that buyer. Most of the time, anything they find in an HQS is going to fall back on the buyer. The HQS is focused more for rental as well. It's a Section 8, and the company, I think you guys use the same company as City of Largo uses. That company is going out for Section 8 housing inspections, and it's a rental mindset rather than a homeowner mindset. When I previously worked for the city of Largo, we did not have an HQS inspection. They all the city governments kind of started doing it about the same time. We had a case where somebody bought a home and then they wanted to come right back to our housing rehab program because they couldn't live in that home because of the inspection. So then we threw in this inspection because you're giving money. The HQS is really, at this point, making it impossible for these buyers to move forward with these properties without having to do the repairs themselves. Sometimes sellers are saying no, and it creates a mess at the end where these are blowing up at the end, or we're as realtors even, I'm paying for the repairs to be done so the buyer can buy the home. So my suggestion would be, instead of this HQS inspection, is to have housing quality standards. Is to have a sign-off, some kind of release acknowledgement that they understand the home has these certain things, or, they're already passing a 4-point, so they can get insurance on the home. And what I'm finding is with that HQS inspection, it's little things. It's not things that even came under the 4-point, that you really want to know, the big expensive things in the home. HQS is there's safety items, and I get it, but we all probably have, if you have on your personal home an HQS inspection, you wouldn't be living in your home. So that's a big issue I'm seeing. And then, another struggle right now, besides pricing and all the challenges, is most buyers are meeting a gap in appraisal. So these homes are going for way over the value, way over what they'll appraise for. And so it creates a challenge with the down payment assistance programs, and with these buyers, they don't have the funds to say, and they can't with the program guidelines, they can't say, all right, if it appraises for X amount, I'll pay so much over that to get the property. And I don't think that one can be solved, because I don't think that would work with SHIP or home or any of the funds. But purchase price limits and the HQS are things that I would look at.
Lindsay, do you happen to know if HQS is required by SHIP or home?
I do not believe.
I can actually
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that. So I can tell you what the city of St. Pete has done. So the city of St. Pete has never done an HQS inspection. They actually get a copy of the home inspection that the buyer has already paid for. The problem with what the city of St. Pete does is that they look at that home inspection, and any little thing that the inspector says needs to be fixed, the city's going to say needs to be fixed. And like Lindsay said, most of it is very little stuff that in our houses, we all have those issues. But I've been told by the city of St. Pete that they're actually going to go away from that, and they're just going to take the 4-point and the wind mint. And so the 4-point is the 4 big items in the house, that all have to be, that you need to get insurance.
Yeah.
So, perhaps that's something that the city of Clearwater can look at, and hopefully the city of Largo and Pinellas County as well, because Lindsay's absolutely right. It's keeping people from getting into their houses because they failed that HQS at the end, that both the lender and the realtor have told the seller that this is coming up, and we know that it's going to be there, and please make sure that everything is in good working order. The one thing I always talk about is making sure that you have working smoke detectors. That's one of the things that usually fails in HQS, but it still keeps people from being able to get the assistance and buy the house. So.
And the 4-point is, it's the insurability of the home. And I get it, I was there when the HQS came into play, and it had a great intention. And I think everyone has gone to this one servicer to provide those inspections. And it took liability, some of the liability and risk off of the city. We're giving you these funds, and we want to make sure that the home's livable. But you have the 4-point, and the 4 points are strict now, and what I usually as a realtor can negotiate for a seller to do is 4-point items. Hey, this home's not insurable, these items have to be taken care of. And that's done at the beginning of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
So we have Rock Solid Home Inspections does our inspections for us.
Okay.
And that's not, we don't want the homeowner relying on our inspection. They get their own inspection as well, but we have Rock Solid do that. I don't know that it's ever impacted a sale. No, we don't have a huge volume of them, particularly of late, since the pandemic. I'll look into that. That's interesting. Like I said, I don't think we've ever had a problem arise out of their inspections, but certainly don't want that to happen at the 11th hour. So noted. I will look into that. Thank you.
So does the timing and the time it takes for a resident to get down payment assistance affect whether their house is purchased? And then a follow-up to that would be, if so, is there something that the city could do to help expedite that? Those are just two questions.
Absolutely. My opinion, Robin.
I knew Robin had something to say about that. We've talked about this.
I wouldn't say the city of Clearwater, I would say other down payment programs, we almost, as realtors and lenders, have to discourage because there's no way that their timeline will be accepted. So a seller wants to close immediately, and if they have 20 other offers that are going to give them that quick close date, and then we're asking for a 60-day closing, they have no shot in that property. So the length of time that it takes to process the down payment program and loan has to meet the timeline that the lender can close the loan. And so usually the lenders can close the loan in 30 to 45 days. So you want to see that the down payment program can do it as well, and it's not holding up lending, let's say.
So I'm going to go to another program. There are some programs out there. One is in the city of Tampa. One is all the way over in Seminole County, not city of Seminole County, where the buyer actually gets approved ahead of time by the down payment assistance program, whether it's the city of Clearwater or the city of St. Petersburg or the city of Tampa, and they get a reservation number. And they cannot go under contract until they have that approval. And so now they've been approved, they've been told, they have a reservation that says you can afford this purchase price, you will get this amount of money. So now that that part has been done, now the lender knows that they're getting that money and it's not going to hold things up.
I'm sorry, isn't that the same thing as I have to pre-qualify when I want to buy a house? Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes and no. I can pre-qualify you in, there are two different things. There's pre-qualification where I get your information, I run your credit, I review as the loan officer, I review your income and your assets, and I run an automated underwriting system and everything says okay, and now you have a pre-qualification. A pre-approval is I've really gathered all of your documentation, sent it to an underwriter. So the first thing, that pre-qualification, I can do in an hour. The pre-approval will take about just under a week, okay? Now, I will tell you that the city, I haven't done one with the city of Tampa, but Seminole County, to pre-approve someone, they do take about 30 days, which is really about how long a full loan takes. So if you're looking to buy a house and trying to get down payment assistance, you need to know well ahead of time. You need to go and you go to whoever it is, the city of Tampa, Seminole County, city of Clearwater, and you say, okay, I would like to try to get your down payment assistance. Here's here's my financial world is laid before you, and they do their underwriting and say, okay, now you are approved. So yes, you are getting pre-approved, just like if you were buying a house. It's just going to take a little longer to get that pre-approval. But now you know that you're going to get whatever down payment assistance is coming from that municipality, and you can go back to your lender and say, I'm getting $45,000 from the city of Clearwater towards my purchase if I purchase within the city limits of Clearwater. So now the issue becomes, we have here in Pinellas County 4 municipalities who have SHIP funds. St. Pete, Clearwater, Largo, Pinellas County itself. And as Lindsay said earlier, you can get pre-approved by the city of Clearwater that says you can buy a house as long as it's within the city limits of Clearwater. Well, there are plenty of addresses where the address says Clearwater and you're not within the city limits. So now you're saying, okay, I can buy this house, but I can't buy the house next door because this one's in the city of Clearwater, this one is not. So is there a single organization? There actually is here in Pinellas County that the city of Clearwater actually uses to approve their loans before it comes to the city for final approval. And could maybe that organization pre-approve everyone for all of the assistance programs within the county so that now they can say, you qualify for anywhere in Pinellas County, no matter where you're buying. Would it put the onus on that organization and put a little more burden on that organization? Yes, but they're an excellent organization. They already do the underwriting for the city, so that could be something to think about.
And that'll also allow for that flexibility for the purchase price, because if that purchase price is so limited, and I understand, because, the limit of the purchase price is just,
Well,
and then the people that needs that affordable home cannot really.
Right, and then the purchase price limits differ on the municipality. City of St. Pete just increased their purchase price limit to $391,000. Here in Clearwater, it's like $245,000, $244,000.
With SHIP, it's lower. With HUD, we're up around a 310, I think.
Right, 311.
Yeah.
Nice round number of 311,980.
I think that's also where the issue comes in, is getting, if we could get all these down payment programs on the same page, it would be great, and that would help. And I know City of Largo struggles, everyone's struggling, and Robin's getting calls from the county, everyone, well, why aren't you guys using the program? How do we get people? Well, the programs are the problem right now. The programs that are put in place to help people are not helping Nellis Park compared to buying a home in City of St. Petersburg. There are differences in prices. So obviously everyone's market's a little different, so their purchase price limits are going to be different. If you're talking about affordable housing, though, we're all getting kind of at the same price point, so it seems like you could have a standard purchase price limit, you could have a standard program, and absolutely have, there's a few non-for-profits in the area that can process these down payment assistance loans, but I think it's as a community getting everyone on the same page, then it's going to help all the programs that are struggling, because all the programs are asking, why aren't we getting down payment cases?
Yeah, it sounds like the first step is trying to get all the jurisdictions on the same page. And as I mentioned earlier, I might have that forum to try to make that happen, and I'll push for that. Speed. Is such a factor too.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is the inspections, the last minute inspections, if we can figure out a way to mitigate that, deal with it on the front end, through a single inspection perhaps, right, instead of the HQS. So I'm not sure if there's a regulatory requirement.
And it doesn't sound like there would be if City of St. Petersburg does not do that type of inspection. It doesn't sound like there is, but the 4-point would be an amazing choice. The buyer's already, getting it and has to have that. So you're guaranteed to have the 4-point, and then the 4-point items are done. Now the home's insurable, and the 4 points of the home, which are the major things that a buyer would have issues with.
Yeah, so just eliminating any other inspection but the 4-point and the wind mitigation.
And then a
that
sign-off.
was-
Sign-offs are always great, and this is, you understand that, I think the HQS or any of these additional inspections were to protect the jurisdictions and the program, if they weren't giving funds to a home that, was going to fall apart, for them, so.
Chuck, this might better be addressed through the housing compact.
Yeah, that's the other forum as well. As you all know, we had a housing compact signed with those major jurisdictions I mentioned earlier. The county just they're always the last to sign something like that. They were the lead on it. They signed it in February. So that's done, but it's not done. That's like the starting point.
Right.
There's a countywide tactical team, committee, if you will. I'm on that committee. A member, someone in our planning and development department also will serve in that committee along with me. So there's a forum that we can have these discussions too, you know. So I'll make sure I bring these things to the table, absolutely, because they're really good ideas, really good feedback. So that's DPA stuff. I think that's great stuff. I'll report back as I make progress or lack of. Any other thoughts on our rehab program, for example? We administer that in-house. You know, I think we do a pretty good job with that. We're at $45,000 of a maximum loan. You know, we don't put in pools with that program. It's code-related stuff, roofs, AC, flooring, that kind of stuff. I think we do a good job with it. It's hard because of, you know, the construction climate right now. You know, we made some changes to the program. We reopened it up after the pandemic. We have a handful of folks in the pipeline. I think we're doing okay. We do media pushes every now and then. We do direct mailings to our community to remind people of the program. So I think we do okay. I'd like the volume to increase a little bit more. You know, that program is preserving affordable housing. It's helping people age in place. You know, it's a good program. So,
Joe, you just were mentioning marketing. Perhaps what the city could do is develop some type of information package that would pertain all of this information that could be shared with the local nonprofits who are dealing with these people day in and day out. So if we've got a client that we're working with, perhaps we could share that information. I know a lot of it because I sit on this board. My staff may not know some of it, and they're really the ones who are working hand in hand with all of the clients. So something that I could share with my staff would be very beneficial.
okay.
Especially something in writing that they get to take home and actually look at, and not just, oh, I'm getting all this information, I have to take these notes. Maybe I wrote it down wrong, whatnot, yeah.
Yeah.
Like a little
Yeah,
packet.
we have you know, pre-printed stuff, you know, flyers, and that stuff I think is good enough information. Yeah, I can get some of that stuff to you, Kevin, and yeah, and even wider distribution. I think
That's why the wider distribution,
Yes.
when anybody applies for a grant application, include that information to the nonprofit as further information that can be shared.
You know, because we get so many folks, you know, so many organizations applying under our AAP program, we have that mailing list that we can get that stuff out to. So, really good point. Oh, yeah. Yeah, something I should probably raise. We've done something that we haven't done in a long time, if ever. We, ever?
Ever.
We're initiating foreclosure on one of our loans, okay? We in 2004, a woman came to us asking for a rehab loan. We did an analysis of the home, and it was too far gone. And at that time, we had a program where we would demolish the home and build a new home for that person. Okay, so that's what we did. So she had a loan somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000, $130,000. Just refused to pay us. You know, countless letters and phone calls. And, you know, we worked out packages with her. We revised her loan terms 2 or 3 different times. And each time, she fell immediately back into default. She told, we have documentation that she explained to us that there were multiple adults living at the home, which you would think would give more ability to pay that mortgage, $700 a month mortgage. Crickets, you know. Can't run a loan program if you're not willing to foreclose. You know, because of that, and because we hadn't foreclosed, that resonates, that gets out in the community, and our loans turned into something more of a joke, you know, and we had to do this. It's very unfortunate to do it in the time we're doing it, but this wasn't an issue that raised from the pandemic. This was an issue that she just refused to pay our loan. Now, she has the ability to, she hasn't been served yet, but she'll have the ability to sell her home and actually sell it for more than she owes on it. So it's not like this person doesn't have options. But what we're not going to do is another workout package. So we went to council, and we asked council for the authority to proceed with foreclosure. and they unanimously approved that recommendation. They fully understand, with sympathy and empathy, of course, they understand that we need to manage these programs, and foreclosure needs to be a tool, albeit last resort, it needs to be a tool. So, thank you.
Do you mind if I add some
Please.
data?
Please.
And forgive me, I don't have my notes in front of me. Denise Sanderson, Economic Development and Housing. So unfortunately, Chuck wasn't able to be present at the council meeting in which we presented the information. But just to give some context, we have about 400 active loans, of which there is less than 24 that have any kind of default status or late payment status. And of those, and I believe it was really closer to a dozen, actually. And of those, a couple of those are in probate, or one has just come out of probate. So the reality is we only have very few loans of those 400 where we have people struggling to make payment, or in the case that Chuck just described, refusing to do so because we don't believe it's an inability at this stage. The entire amount of funds that are currently in default are just over $103,000. This particular homeowner represents 53% of that defaulted amount. So this is a single case that is particularly egregious. We don't anticipate coming back to council in the near term, really at any point, with additional foreclosure recommendations. It is this particular homeowner, this particular circumstance, which drove us to make this recommendation, with more than 65 letters that went out to her over the course of time. We had actually Chuck developed in 2017 a foreclosure policy with, unfortunately, this homeowner in mind. We had no policy in place that provided council direction in terms of when we would bring foreclosure or the steps that we would take to prevent foreclosure, because that's always the goal. We put that policy in place in 2017, and in early 2020, we planned to bring to council this request to initiate foreclosure with the pandemic hit. And so for that reason, we went into a hold pattern with this particular homeowner. We feel that now is the time, as Chuck said, she has the opportunity to sell her home most assuredly for more than what is owed on the property. She can certainly walk away from it free and clear. So we feel quite confident that we're not going to be putting her out on the street, as an example, but we are requiring action from her at this point. So just wanted to provide a little bit of context there. We do a great job collecting on our loans, and most homeowners are quite responsible, which is obviously the desire that we hope to see.
Any more feedback from the board? Do you want us to?
I do. I want to know if there's anything we can do, like, for the people that are not homeowners, like the ones who rent currently, like a one-bedroom apartment is approximately like $1,700. A two-bedroom apartment is like approximately $2,000. Is there anything we can do for those kind of people?
It's really tough. Right now, the county has, they're working through an emergency rental assistance program. We refer a lot of people to that program. You know, we've heard various things of jurisdictions imposing rent restrictions or considering imposing rent restrictions. You know, it's tough. I mean, can we regulate our way out of this thing? You know, I don't know. I mean, I don't think so. You know, we've put we've asked the landlords to carry the water a lot on this throughout the pandemic. There's a rent moratorium. It was an eviction moratorium in place for, more than a year? So what happened when we came out of that moratorium? We were, at that very time, we were experiencing rent increases at a rate we've never seen before, literally never seen before. Do we think that moratorium, that regulation didn't have something to do with that? I mean, if we think that, we're probably remiss, right? I think the core of the problem of the housing crisis is units. We don't have enough units. The demand exceeds the supply. Very simple. You don't have to be an economist to know when that happens. You know, you can charge anything you want, get it. So if we put regulations in place, you know, all that's going to do is discourage people from getting in the business of building that product. And we're not closing that gap of the supply-demand imbalance. It's a really hard one because the rent prices are insane. they've gone through the roof. Reports of 24 to 31% increases in the last 12 months, hearing various numbers. It's nuts. I don't know the answer. I don't.
From the nonprofit world, we don't know the answer either. I personally don't think rental assistance is the answer. I think it's a delay tactic. Rapid rehousing is not the answer, because how long can we help people? We can't help them for the rest of their life at the levels they need help right now. So that's, and to be honest, rent restrictions or rent moratoriums that they can't increase rent, I don't see that as the answer either, because that then encourages folks to evict them, so then perhaps they can raise their rent. So yeah, more affordable housing is the only answer I see.
It's also directly linked to employment and wages. And, what's interesting is when those numbers go up, those rental numbers go up, it's not helping the problem that a lot of businesses are seeing now, especially in this city, with hiring and retaining employees. Especially because since the pandemic, there's companies all across the US that have completely changed to a remote system where you can literally live anywhere you want. So why would you pay the $1,700 somewhere when you can move somewhere where it's much cheaper? And that's the issue. The issue that I think is, it's a number of units issue, but it's also an issue of the employers need to be involved in that conversation. I think that there are cases in the US, and I need to do a little bit of research on that, where employers have gotten together, or organizations of employers have gotten together and said, if we're a hospital and we can't hire nurses because they can't find anywhere to live on the salary that we're willing to give them, there must be something we can do. And when you look at a business model like the Habitat business model, where the community partners are constantly helping bridging that gap, and especially in construction costs and through sponsorships and things like that, I don't know why an employer wouldn't be at least want to be partially responsible for where their employees live, especially when they ask them to come in physically. And I think that's a conversation that the pandemic has brought forward, but it's a conversation we should have had a long time ago, where we have a number of very large employers in this community that would pay a certain amount for a guaranteed accommodation of sorts for the people that they're trying to hire. And I think that's all linked. It's linked to the wages that have to go up. It's linked to, the lack of number of units, but it's all in one. I think one influences the other, but also the vice versa is also true.
Yeah, you don't hear a lot of, in response to that question is jobs. Let's create, higher skill, higher wage jobs. And we have Ms. Sanderson to do that. Economic development. It's certainly a major objective of hers.
It's interesting from the employer standpoint, because you hear, especially currently, inflation's going to be a big problem because all employees are going to be asking for a raise. Well, if everything costs more money, whatever your company is selling or making and then selling is also going to cost more. So all those costs obviously go hand in hand, right? When you are a company or an employer that require people to come in physically, and so to live in our community, because it's basically where you're asking them to do, or commute into the community, you have a role in making that community an affordable place to live. And I think that we need to maybe focus on that a little bit more strongly than we've had in the past. I'm thinking obviously right away of the large employers, but there's also the hospitals that are around right here. There's a bunch of really large organizations that would highly benefit from having better affordable housing. And, maybe once we crunch the numbers, they can actually see that it would actually benefit them to the point where they should be investing in these things.
Sure.
You were bringing up a point that
we've actually talked about for a very long time on my side of the house, on the economic development side. So back in 2009-10, the city did an economic development strategic plan. During that strategic planning process, we looked at our labor shed. Where are people coming from? At that time, and certainly today, we are still seeing it, there is net in migration, meaning more people come into our community on a daily basis to work than leave our community for work. So that net in migration, where are all those people coming from? And we looked at that labor shed. It was as far away as Citrus County, right? So we're talking Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, Citrus County on a daily basis. Certainly Lakeland. Can you imagine making that commute on a daily basis? And some of these folks, unfortunately, are working in low-skill, low-wage jobs, perhaps on the beach and otherwise. So now in today's economy, we're looking at great inflation. Look what's happened just in the last 2 weeks with gasoline prices. And if you're a commuter coming in from Citrus County, as an example, now you have a really difficult decision to make. Am I going to continue to show up for work? So this conversation around being able to live near where you work has been a significant issue for a very, very long time, as evidenced by that 2009-10 data that we looked at. So this is not a new issue, but boy, are we really seeing the impacts of a supply-demand issue. You know, Chuck and council have talked recently, you know, that it is a supply-demand issue. We really, since 2008-9, have not seen multifamily development until the last couple of years. And so this has been a supply-demand issue for a long time. I think vacancy's down to 3.8%. I heard anecdotally this morning that inflation, and now with gasoline prices coming on that, you need an additional $3,000 a year. Well, that's not likely to be made up in wage increases for our lower wage households. They're not going to see those kinds of price increases. So some really difficult decisions are going to be made around that kitchen table. I think we've got a long time to really kind of suffer through this pain. And when you look at the eviction moratorium lifting, when you look at the supply chain issues, it's not solved quickly. We're not going to be able to build enough units quickly. I don't know how to answer those questions. We have been struggling with this for a very long time, and we've sort of been watching this tsunami coming at us throughout the entire pandemic. A lot of Band-Aid approaches from the federal government and even at the local level, trying to mitigate some of the near-term issues, but it's catching us. It's catching us for sure.
And to that point, I read an article, I think it was yesterday, in the Tampa Bay Times about the possibility of declaring an affordable housing state of emergency. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I read that as well.
And I don't really know what that entails, but it sounds like the same thing. It sounds like a Band-Aid that stops the bleeding for the time being, but then creates a bigger issue in the end. When when you're telling landlords you can't evict because there's a pandemic, well, if they don't collect payment for 6 months, the rents are going to have to increase. It's just how the economy works, just how math works. So, it's interesting to look at all these things, but we have to make sure we look at them globally, not just individually, and saying, what is the one tool we can use now? Because if that tool ends up, being having a negative effect in the future, we gotta be careful.
And I read the article, but that's the extent of my knowledge. But what I think I understand about declaring a state of emergency, Chuck mentioned we've got some local governments that are contemplating or would desire to contemplate putting rent freezes in place for unsubsidized properties. With subsidized properties, HUD kind of tells us what they can do. So, but it was determined illegal to put a rent freeze in place. Well, I think the workaround then became declare a state of emergency, a local state of emergency, and then you have certain authorities that you can enact. And so I think that's sort of what that conversation is about. It will be really interesting to see how local conversations evolve over the next few months as people sort of push different directions to try to make some impact here. I'm not really sure where we're going to land on that at all. I know Tampa, the Tenant Bill of Rights, that's a discussion we're likely to have to some degree here. There's pros and cons to that. lot of pros, but there's some things that I think we would need to watch out for. But I think it's, we've talked about the remote workers, right? Chuck, you were saying, I think yesterday, our rental prices are actually not out of the norm on a nationwide basis, which is shocking to me. What is, though, our wages are particularly low. So now we've got all these folks coming in. My husband's a home builder up in Wesley Chapel, can't build them fast enough. We also can't get garage doors or appliances, so you can't get COs. So it doesn't matter how quickly you can build, you can't get them sold.
Yeah.
They're pre-sold, but you can't close on those things. So many challenges that are impacting this supply-demand cycle. But you still got all of these folks, particularly out of the Northeast, that are still thinking this place is a bargain and they can
Absolutely.
remote work.
Absolutely, and that's what they
Right?
do, because
Yeah.
they get Chicago wages for Pinellas County rent prices, so.
New York, Chicago, California is another big one. So you go to a house and it's license plates.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody, and but what's has scared me the last 2 years, and it's interesting that you said that you guys did a study on this pre-COVID in 2010. It's seeing the base support of our economy, teachers, fire, police, nurses, hospitality, which is a big industry here. They can't afford to live in our economy. Like, they can't afford to live here because of the inflation of these home prices, everything, and the wages aren't matching it.
Right.
And, one solution would be great, but I think, like as everybody says, there's so many different things that have to happen to, help it. I know people say the bubble's not going to burst, but it really feels like a slow leak might have to happen, because
Yeah.
once, the people that support your economy can't afford to live in it, it's going to be a problem. And it is a lot of remote work. Every New York or California client that I have, they're coming in with these high-paying jobs. Now they can, work remote and live here. It's cheap to them.
Yeah.
These, them putting cash down on an $800,000 home is cheap for them. So.
And, in that construction industry, and I'm sure Gabby, you would agree, in 2008-9, so many folks left the trades because you couldn't get a job in it. So now bringing trades back, with or without skill, many. So my husband sees this every day. I'm sure you're seeing it every day in the subcontractors that you bring in. So many challenges in getting quality work done as well, which can extend build cycles and all sorts of challenges, all aligned with other supply chain issues. That I don't know where your build cycles have gone, if you've been able to maintain those build cycles, but I know my husband is telling me 130-day build cycles, now more like 160, 170 days.
Yeah, we have so far, but now, towards the end of our fiscal year, we have experienced so much, and again, it's because of the supply chain and the bottleneck with certainly suppliers. So, I cannot get trusses. So now we have many houses that we will probably not be able to close because of just one simple issue. And as much as we try to see in advance and that forward thinking about what else can happen, it's just like every day you're challenged with something else.
Right.
So it has become increasingly more difficult. And the same house that we were building last year is costing us now $30,000 or $40,000 more.
Right.
Now, we're serving the same population, it's the same wages, but, the houses are increasingly, so much more expensive,
Yeah.
So it's becoming increasingly difficult to build affordable housing, to build any housing, but affordable housing.
Right, and those developers that are perhaps less experienced and have less capital, now it's, you add time on receiving those payments. So that's a greater risk for those developers as well.
Yeah.
So you're going to see developers leaving the marketplace, quite possibly. So this problem, I don't know when it gets solved or how we solve it. We certainly are struggling to figure that out at the local level. Where can we plug holes? This is really a national, global issue, certainly, that we're all hearing about on a daily basis as it is, but.
And you're all plugged into the policy side of it too, with your work on the AHAC, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. That's really, how we can affect the non-regulated stuff, you know. But it's an uphill climb. It really is, you know. So.
All right.
Any more feedback from the board? My reporting out, I think.
Today.
Yes, I apologize for
To
the
get
length.
going.
Anything else for check at this point? All right. Item number 7 is board members to be heard, but I think we just did that. So let me go back around to this. Our next NAHAB meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 12th at 9 a.m. here in council chambers, and we are adjourned.
Thank you, everybody.